Let's talk about the promotion of science in Pennsylvania and a new Arnold report next on Behind the Headlines.
This is Behind the Headlines, with behind-the-scenes analysis on issues affecting Pennsylvanians, sponsored by the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. Now, here's your host.
Hi, welcome to a new edition of Behind the Headlines. I'm Charlie Greenewalt, Senior Fellow of the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. As usual, I'm joined by my co-host, Maura Donnelly. Maura, welcome.
Hello, Charlie.
Why, today we want to talk a little bit about something that I'm concerned about, the status of science. We have decided to let the Russians take us to our space station.
We have?
That we no longer need access to our space station. Let the Russians do it. And I wonder if that says anything about American science, Maura.
It says we have some work to do.
Yeah, I think. And someone that has been doing that work, someone who has been studying science and promoting science for many, many years. We have with us today Diane DeBaise. Diane, you are a earth science teacher for quite a few years now with Commonwealth Connections Academy.
That's
and
right.
You head up the science efforts of the Academy. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Actually, I work with quite a team of science teachers. I'm one person sitting here, but we have an amazing team all working together. Not one of us is in charge. How about that?
I was going to say, I thought you were the coach.
Nope, we just kind of coach each other, and it
good.
works out very well. We love it that way.
Okay. Maura?
Well, I think, we have a lot of, I understand you have a lot of interesting programs going on, and you were recently very involved in a statewide or a regional science project or fair. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
That was the Pennsylvania Junior Academy of Science, which is a statewide program where students grades 7 through 12 compete by designing an experiment, carrying it out on their own with their mentors, which are their science teachers, and then presenting their findings to a panel of judges at a regional competition. That took place in February, and we had 3 students entered in that with amazing science experiments. They did receive second awards, so we're very proud of Luke Meck and Stephen Meck and Conrad Zimmerman for their efforts.
Now, of course, last year you had someone who actually went all the way to the States. Is that correct?
Yes, Luke Meck. Last year was in 7th grade. He's our little inventor. He is working on inventing, which everyone says it can't be done, a perpetual motion machine.
Okay.
Using magnets and pistons.
Wonderful.
Oh.
I mean, this is such a high level thought process this child has, and he didn't succeed in inventing a perpetual motion machine yet. I imagine he'll just keep at it forever and ever, but he did invent an amazing approach toward that. I think he's going to get there, and he received a first award at the regional competition. He also received a special award called the Brinjack Award for Physics at that regional competition, went on to states, the state competition at Penn State University and State College, and received a first award there.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes. So we are building that as adding it to the list of our science competitions that we do, our Odyssey of the Mind. We have our robotics club. We have science fair efforts. We are going to get into the Google Science Fair next year. So we're trying to expand our students' interest in, let me do science with something I love.
Now, we've had your superintendent here many times, Dr. Tooley, and Dr. Tooley, I think, has explained Pennsylvania Commonwealth Connections Academy so well, and your mission and your accomplishments. But now that you as a representative of the science department are here, I imagine many of the things that we do in science education involve labs. And that must be a bit more challenging when you're doing online education. How do you handle labs in that situation? How is that done?
We have a couple of different approaches to labs. Of course, as an online school, we do provide virtual labs for our students where they can learn the concepts behind an experiment by doing a lab online. In addition to that, we send lab kits to our students. So they receive the physical equipment that they need to do a lab. Then they come online with us, so I'm on camera there, and we demonstrate. We have the science teachers have the same type of cart set up that you would have in a classroom, where we set up the equipment and demonstrate the lab. So they have that, and they're doing their lab at home with their learning coach while we demonstrate it. And then we have something really unique and exciting. Our administration purchased for us last year a mobile lab.
And we've talked about that on the show before, so that's
so this
very
is a
cool.
tricked out RV. It has a lab in it, a really nice high school lab. Every piece of equipment we would ever want to do lab experiments physically with our students. And we travel in teams around the state, and our students meet us at various locations and do labs with us in the mobile classroom.
I imagine they're very excited when the mobile lab is going to arrive.
We get emails, when are you coming?
Yeah.
Are you going to do that one with us?
Well, that's got to be a lot of fun for them, I would imagine.
It is for us too, yes.
Now, do the students themselves develop their experiments if they're going either, in the classroom or if they're going into competition?
Yes. That's an important concept to teach, the inquiry method for science. The PSSA emphasizes that with their questions. They present, they call them scenarios, where an experiment is going on, and then the questions relate to that. In addition, with the STEM initiative in education across the country.
Could you say what STEM is so our viewers know?
Science, technology, engineering, and mathematics.
Okay,
this is what industry has asked us for
STEM.
as educators, to develop these skills in our students. So the most important thing for them to understand in science is, okay, I have a question, how does this work? Why does it do this? And with that question, we teach them to go on and develop an inquiry investigation to find out the answer.
Oh, that's great.
How long have you been involved with the Pennsylvania Junior Academy of Science?
As a teacher, I've been involved with it for about 6 years. We are, in the 2 regions that I've worked with at Connections Academy, we are the first cyber school to enter into this. It's been 2 years.
Oh, that's phenomenal.
So it's something we're building. Look for us. We'll be a presence at the state competition next year.
How does your participation in the Pennsylvania Junior Academy of Science, how does that move forward the science education of the individual students, Diane?
They're applying the skills that we teach them. They're designing they're coming up with their own question, designing their own experiment. I mean, we don't hand them, you're going to do this experiment. They design their own experiment. They carry out their own scientific research, collect the data, and then they have to take it the additional step, that last step, excuse me, of communicating their findings. And this is the competition part. They learn to communicate what they found, even if they disprove their hypothesis. That's fine. That's part of science. And they do that in front of a panel of judges. So they're putting together the PowerPoints, the tables, the graphs.
They're learning presentation skills.
They are. They're answering questions. They're sitting in a room watching other students do the same. So they have a basis for comparison of how they're doing with the process.
Now I have a question for you. Do you have any young girls that are interested in competing? Good.
Yes, I do. In fact, I was a little disappointed this year. I had a young lady who came up with an experiment. She was looking at the similarities in fingerprint patterns between relatives, between siblings.
Oh.
And she did the experiment, and then she became very ill and couldn't come to the competition. So I'm hoping that that will get carried on. Yes.
That's great. I have a friend who has daughters who are very much into the sciences, and they're going on for graduate degrees now, which is just phenomenal. And they're being offered scholarships because they have specific scholarships set aside just for women who want to go into the field of science. And I think that if we can cultivate that in our young girls, we're going to have a lot of women in the sciences over the years. One
of my 6th graders that comes to many of our mobile classroom or mobile lab activities is planning to compete in PJS next year. In fact, she has her investigation already written.
Oh, good.
So I'm excited to work with her. The great thing about the PJAS, the Pennsylvania Junior Academy of Science, is that at the state level, as the students get older, juniors and seniors, there are special ancillary competitions where they can actually get scholarships for college in their field, physics, that they're competing in physics, chemistry, biology, whatever they're interested in. So it's a great program.
Now, I understand you had your mobile lab moving around a little bit, and I heard something about snow.
Lake effect snow.
Snow experiments. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
We are partnered with the Paleontological Research Institution out of Ithaca, New York.
Okay.
And they sent us, one of their education research associates, to present a mobile lab, an inquiry-based activity with our students in what better place than Erie, Pennsylvania, on lake effect snow.
And what month was this?
This was in February.
Okay.
And
good month to be in Erie.
It was. The schools were closed in Erie because it was so cold. It was below zero. But our students all showed up to do the lake effect snow experiment. We were up in a tower at the Tom Ridge Center. They have an observation tower over Lake Erie, and our Dr. Dugan Haas took them up the tower. Now, there is an indoor observation, but no, the kids drug us outside in all this wind and zero weather, and they're pointing and snapping pictures and talking about lake effect snow, and the teachers are standing there shivering. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience for the children, and we are going to continue this relationship with the Paleontological Research Institution.
Well, that sounds wonderful and exciting for the kids.
It is.
Yeah, it does. The next stage is there's an ice institute in New Hampshire. Maybe you want to check into doing some projects.
Give me their website, their web address.
In the last 30 seconds of our time together, Diane, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about science education by the Pennsylvania Connections Academy. What, being a teacher who's done this for several years now, what would you want to share with the public?
We are a non-traditional school because we are a cyber school, and therefore it's important to us to provide a non-traditional science education. Our students will experience science firsthand. In every opportunity we can give them because we have a global classroom.
Okay.
That's great.
Well, we want to thank you for being with us today, Diane, and good luck with those projects and with your students. It's trite, it seems to be trite, and I know it's said over and over again, but they're our future, and what they do with you and the inspiration I get from you is so important, and we wish you the best.
Thank you.
We'll be back for the second segment of Behind the Headlines right after this.
Behind the Headlines is brought to you as a public service by the Pennsylvania Business Council, envisioning a Commonwealth in which residents enjoy a very high quality of life in sustainable communities. The Council works aggressively to define key long-term policy strategies and solutions that make the Commonwealth more competitive, creating and sustaining a better Pennsylvania. Additional underwriting provided by the Worrell Corporation Foundation, based in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, by the Edward H. and Jeannie Arnold Foundation, and the American Home Bank, a nationally chartered and FDIC-insured yet locally owned and operated bank in central Pennsylvania, and by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business. Behind the Headlines is also supported as a public service by Daily Express, transporting construction, farm, and industrial equipment throughout the United States. And by Penn Waste, your best local choice for your waste removal and recycling needs.
Penn Waste is proud to be a locally owned business. Since the company's founding in 2000, it has employed many of its neighbors as members of a dedicated team of professionals. Penn Waste is proud of its many contributions to the people of its service area, through support of numerous community organizations such as Christmas Addicts and the Junior League of York. One more way they improve the quality of life where they live and work.
Hi, welcome back to the second segment of Behind the Headlines. And in this segment, I'm joined by the chairman of the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy, Ed Arnold. Welcome back, Ed.
Good to see you.
So nice to have you back for another segment, another installment of the Arnold Report. Of course, what everyone is talking of across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is Governor Corbett's budget proposal. And we wanted to come to you and get your thoughts about the budget. Of course, you now are retired from the business world in some ways not. But you are still very much an active observer of these things and someone who understands business inside and out. We'd like to talk about Governor Corbett's budget today, but we want to break our analysis up into two different installments. So this first show, let's talk about the governor's revenues and the revenues in this budget. What are the big differences between this budget and the budget that is just passing with Governor Rendell in terms of revenue, Ed?
Unfortunately, there really are none, and that's one of the problems. His no new taxes pledge is not necessarily a very wise decision. To say that you should increase the tax burden is one thing. To say you should not change the way people are taxed is another. Pennsylvania's tax structure in some ways is very fair, in some ways is very questionable. What I want to talk about specifically in making our taxes more efficient, our personal income tax is very clean and very efficient. It's our biggest source of revenue, 39%. It's a rate, in case most people don't know, and I've been taking a survey, and most people don't know what the rate is, and I'm talking about businessmen and so on, and academic people. It's 3.08 flat tax. Mm-hmm. Flat tax is a good tax, and because it has very few deductions, it relatively brings in a tremendous amount of dollars because it doesn't have all this manipulation like our federal taxes do.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
And other states, for that matter. Now, the sales tax is exactly the opposite, which is our second biggest tax. This brings in 30% of our revenue, and it's a 6% rate, but it has unbelievable number of exemptions, 70 to 80 of them.
In fact, I remember we talked about those on an earlier show, and you were talking about some of the exemptions might be questionable.
Well, the thing is, we continue to add them. It's like the lobbyists continue to just tap away, and we add more and more. What was suggested in previous administration, and was basically, and I don't know the total details of it, but it was a broader tax. Mm-hmm. And what would a broader tax mean is if you were to exempt only food, medicine, and clothing, including taxing the internet, which of course, why this is a sacred cow, I don't understand. Because obviously, whether you buy something on the internet or you buy it through a bricks and mortar store in your community, actually the store in your community will bring more to the local government than anything, because your local stores basically promote the local community, hire people, and so on, pay taxes locally. The internet companies pay nothing.
I don't think the majority of the public realize that, Ed. The difference between the sales tax applies to bricks and mortar establishments downtown and not to the internet. And that seems to give a great advantage to businesses on the internet that don't maintain downtowns and aren't involved in the community in the same way that those local businesses are.
I think one of the reasons originally was the internet was very small. It was a struggling new industry. Let's give it a break. Mm-hmm. It is no longer a small, struggling industry. For all practical purposes, our bricks and mortar retail sales are flat for years now. And there's been a tremendous growth in internet sales, something in the area of 15-20% a year. And they now are a substantial portion of our sales, both sales and services. What I'm also saying is that we should tax all services, such as entertainment, legal, accounting, advisors. And if we did this, if we made it a broad-based tax, a la what our income tax is, it would probably drop to 3+%. Mm-hmm. It might be very similar to the income tax. Mm-hmm. I mean, so basically what we're talking about here is making it a broad-based, lower tax, not necessarily changing the revenue it brings in, but bringing it in a more fair, equitable manner.
Well, this is something that the Commonwealth Caucus has talked about for years, and Sam Rohr, from Berks County, being one of the leaders, and that is, let's lower the sales tax, but let's expand it to many items that are not currently captured by it, and we could eliminate the personal property tax altogether for schools and all the nuisance taxes in the state. But that proposal has struggled, although Governor Rendell started to warm up to it, surprisingly, in his later years.
Well, basically, if we were to have, again, a more fair and equitable property tax, which is a very irrational tax the way it is in Pennsylvania. Some states, specifically California, does do some things right. Their 1% of the real value of the property is a logical way to appraise the value of a property, and therefore that makes it a reasonable tax. Pennsylvania is extremely unfair. Lebanon is finally, where I'm from, Lebanon County, is going to have a reassessment after 37 years. If you build a house recently, you could be paying 3 times more taxes than your neighbor next door who built his house 20 years ago, because he's still being taxed on the price that when he built it then, and you're being priced on today. That makes no sense. A fair number of states have an intelligent system of increasing the valuation on real value on a regular basis. New Jersey does also. Why they can't do this automatically every year, the value of the property, and if you capped it at 1%, it would make it a reasonable thing, and therefore your governments would have to, again, how would they control their budgets? Well, again, I'm not so sure if they would be actually less, because some properties probably are now paying way below 1%, and some are paying definitely substantially above.
So you don't disagree with the philosophy behind Governor Corbett's no new tax pledge idea. You understand the need to restrain public spending on one hand, but you're saying let's look at all of our taxes, let's look at the way we raise revenue, and let's do it more intelligently and in a more effective and common sense way.
And basically, let's not let the lobbyists, which is what runs our sales tax program, because that's why we keep adding ones, because they're lobbied and somebody does a favor, and therefore this is what's done. Obviously, it makes no sense.
One of the biggest pieces that is out there, Ed, is of course Marcellus Shale, and the governor at this point has said no taxes on Marcellus Shale. How do you think that area should be approached?
I don't understand his logic. Again, if he said no new increase in overall business taxes in Pennsylvania, take the monies from Marcellus Shale, which is taxed by just about every other state, but specifically West Virginia, which has a very successful Marcellus Shale program. And in fact, I believe the taxes we were talking about put on are very similar to West Virginia.
I believe it's taxed by every state save one, and Texas taxes it, and Alaska, of course, has
and these states their energy industry is booming. So basically, right now, the Marcellus Shale is a tremendous profitable organization, and therefore, if we were to take and rebalance our corporate tax in Pennsylvania, again, fairness and proper, efficient enforcement of our taxes, get rid of the capital stock tax. We are the only state, literally, that has a substantial capital stock tax and a substantial income tax. No other state. We, from a business standpoint, and I was a businessman, why anybody would open up a business in Pennsylvania with all our taxes, I don't know.
Now repeat that again. We are the only state that has both.
There are some states that have it, but they're very small when they do. Either their income tax is low or their capital stock tax is very low. Ours were both substantial. Now we're saying we're going to phase it out. Well, right now we'd have a chance to very simply eliminate it, which would also eliminate the bureaucracy that is enforcing it.
So you're saying that you'd like to see this capital stock and franchise tax, which we've been talking about eliminating since 1985. Governor Ridge developed a proposal to eliminate it over several years, and we've been working towards that. You're of the mind that let's kill it right now.
Let's get rid of it by, again, pay for it by the Marcellus Shale tax, which is a logical tax done by every other state that has substantial natural gas or oil, for that matter, resources. This is a fair, reasonable tax. It would make Pennsylvania a little more reasonable. But the second part I would also do, which again is back to making something fair, and I hate to say this, but it's a real world I'm talking about here. Pennsylvania has, again, the highest, or tied for the highest, right up there, income tax besides the capital stock tax, especially in the Northeast. But we do not aggressively, and in fact we do not particularly at all, bother to check the accounting of the companies that are transferring income from Pennsylvania to specifically Delaware, and therefore they end up not paying any taxes, particularly in Pennsylvania, because Delaware is a no-tax, income tax, corporate level state. I know, I operate in the entire Northeast. Every other state aggressively audits and makes sure you do not move income out of their state and put it into Delaware. Pennsylvania does not aggressively. And therefore, you as a corporate citizen, the government is telling you, we're going to tax you high, but find a way, here's a nice simple way to avoid it.
So,
this is rather sad, but it's true.
This in public policy circles is called the Delaware loophole, and the Delaware loophole then hasn't been addressed yet.
No, and it will. For some, everyone said, "Well, gee, the corporations will pay more." No, lower their basic tax, and therefore, but then make them pay that.
What about fuel taxes and transportation funding, Ed?
Well, that is another area that, again, now the one problem is we have not increased our tax in 13 years.
In 13 years, we have not increased the fuel tax.
And so therefore, to say that we continually talk about the fact that we have tremendous deferred maintenance, primarily on our bridges, but also on our roads. Well, right now, yes, we do have a high fuel tax. But again, is the enforcement done very well? Specifically, because I came from the trucking industry, and we paid our tax because we were based in Pennsylvania and we were a large corporation. Small truckers don't pay taxes in Pennsylvania that aren't located here, because you cannot afford a guy that got 10, 20, 50, and there are thousands of companies like this. They can drive through the state of Pennsylvania, and a tremendous number do, because the state is the keystone. It's the key. People drive from the Midwest to the east. They go through Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. Yet, because of the capacity of the fuel, you don't have to buy fuel in Pennsylvania, and we can't afford to force them to because we can't audit. There's two solutions to that. One, which may be somewhat challenging, because New Jersey, which has a way lower fuel tax than we do, probably benefits from they don't buy fuel in Pennsylvania, they buy it in New Jersey. So whether they would be willing to join in a consortium to have a regional fuel audit, and if you had regional fuel audit, you could therefore afford to audit a lot of smaller companies, plus you'd have all the companies that are located in those states would automatically be checked. Mm-hmm. That the other thing, though, which would be even simpler, would be to get cooperation from the Delaware Port Authority and all, specifically, again, trucks that cross the state. You would then have an audit trail saying you had so many trips into Pennsylvania because you crossed into Pennsylvania, New Jersey, or vice versa.
Well, in the last 45 seconds that we have here together, what other items did you wish to mention in regard to the revenue side of this proposed governor's budget?
Well, very frankly, I think this whole thing is to really, we said we're going to look at government differently in Pennsylvania. And therefore, are there a lot of other small nuisance taxes that are very expensive to collect? If we were to look at, and we were actually to take a list and show this is what a tax yields and this is what it costs to collect. And the cost should be a two-way street. We only look at it one way, generally. What does it cost the government? But what does it cost the individual company to keep all these records, to go through the audits, to go through all that cost? There's a tremendous tax burden in Pennsylvania on the cost of the corporations keeping all the records to pay the taxes.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for being with us. We're looking for the next installment of the Arnold Report coming up next month. If any of you have any questions for Mr. Arnold about finance or economics, banking, let us know. Write us and email us at the bottom of the screen. We'll be with you again next week on Behind the Headlines. We'll see you then.